not so much to talk about myself, but just kind of let you know where I'm coming from and what my path is to being a presenter here. So I am part of the health promotion team at Salt Lake County Aging and Adult Services, and I've been there since May of 2019. So it's been a roller coaster, right? I've been there pre-COVID, I've been there post-COVID, and now post-COVID. I got my master's in science and kinesiology in 2017. I have my professional certification. I have a couple of them, but the one that I think that pertains most to um, my field is the American College of Sports Medicine exercise physiologist, which I got in 2018. And in 2017, I got my therapeutic recreation technician license, which I'll talk about in a moment. Maybe some of you know what a TRT is. You've probably worked with some. I love working with the older adult population, mainly because in general, as a gross generalization, they view exercise much more as a life giving or a longevity and independence giving part of our lives rather than just an athletic endeavor. And even though exercise was never an athletic thing for me, um, it always was about my emotional health and my ability to do things. I think working with the older adults, they see that. They see exercise in that way. So I really feel like I finally found my people, which is nice. I've lived in Utah since 2008, so I'm like a native. I mean, come on. And I love to do CrossFit. And I like to say that just because it's got a bad rap. It's got some good things to it lately. It's doing a lot of great things for older adults. So I want to talk about my path to caregiving. Um, I started in group exercise in 1996, 1994 as a step aerobics instructor. Back when we called ourselves aerobics instructors, so a long time ago. And that's kind of caregiving, but not really, right? They come in, you teach, they leave, whatever. In 1998, my father was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. And if any of you are familiar with FTD, as it is called, it's a pretty nasty form of dementia. And as you know, dementia is nasty, right? So a nasty form of it is particularly nasty. And what was really hard back in the day when he had FTD was we didn't know a lot about it. So his behaviors were unknown. We didn't have somebody kind of prepping us for it. And as his daughter and as a daddy's girl, I couldn't handle it. I was not able to deal with it very well. It was very painful for me. So he passed in 2013, and about a year later, I found myself without a job. And so I started to volunteer at the Southern Utah Veterans Home as a way to give back. I was like, I couldn't care for my father, but I can care for somebody else's father. Um, Maybe there's a daughter out there that it's just so painful to watch her dad go through this that she needs someone to help her. And I can be that person because even though it's hard to watch, I don't have that emotional connection with this person. And of course, in my 3 to 4 years at the Veterans Home, I was talked into, becoming a therapeutic recreation technician, which is basically the fitness person of long-term care facilities. We're the ones that make sure people come out and play bingo and do exercise and do stuff they recreate. That's the job. So same thing I've always done, but just in a little bit different setting. And what I found when I became that TRT is caregiving's tricky. And I know many of you know this, but you can never do enough caregiving. It's insatiable. There's always more to give. And one of the analogies I have is if you're on the beach and you're digging in the dry sand, sand's always falling in that hole. There's no way you can get that sand out. And so you could spend your whole life digging, trying to get to where no sand falls in, or you can dig and say, like, you know what, I've done enough for today. I need to go care for myself. And by doing that, I can come back tomorrow and actually dig out even more. So unless you're really well practiced at setting your personal boundaries, caregiving can be overwhelming, and we can suffer. Even though we have great intentions and we want to help, we end up hurting ourselves, and that's where, of course, self-care comes in, and we've all heard that term, self-care. But if we don't do self-care, if we don't have those boundaries that we need, we can develop many different stress reactions to caregiving. And two of the big ones And I'm sure many of you have heard these terms. I didn't until I became a TRT and went through continuing ed. And that's when I first heard about compassion fatigue and burnout. And there are two things that we really need to become familiar with, because most of us have at least experienced compassion fatigue. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm just going to read this. I know I shouldn't be just reading off my slides, but there's a really good definition. Compassion fatigue is a broadly defined concept that can include emotional, physical, and spiritual distress in those providing care to another. It is associated with caregiving where people or animals are experiencing significant emotional or physical pain and suffering. And that's from the Compassion Fatigue Awareness Project, which is a great place to go to. I've put the website on there if you want to do some investigation. So the compassion fatigue is something that a wide variety of people can experience. Law enforcement, right? You're going to experience a lot because there's always another victim. There's always another crime. Unfortunately, those things are braided into the human experience. And so when you're the person who's going out to try to help people in those experiences, you can help, but there's something else and something else and something else. And it's the same thing if you're in a long-term care facility, or if you're caring for your spouse or a son or a daughter. There's always something else you need to do. And it gets to be very, very daunting. This also goes for people who care for animals, right? You know, there's people who have they adopted one dog, and then they're like, well, I have one, so I at least should do two. Well, I have two, so why don't I do three? Well, I have three, why don't I do four? And it's the same for volunteers. I'm going to volunteer 10 hours a week. Well, there's 11 hours that need to be covered. I'll do 11. Before you know it, you're doing full-time volunteer. So this is something that we really need to become aware of, and again, start to develop those boundaries so that we don't become a victim of this compassion fatigue. Here are some of the symptoms that come along with compassion fatigue. Emotional and physical exhaustion. I love these because all of us, I think, experience these to a certain point. So we're looking at a combination of them, or really more extreme versions of them. Irritability. I mean, come on, who isn't irritable these days, right? Difficulty sleeping, weight loss, and headaches. I think that, we kind of have to take this with a grain of salt, and at the same time, we need to pay attention to these things. The way I kind of think about it is when you start to feel like you can't do enough to be a helpful part of the solution, so you try to do everything. That's when we know we might be spiraling a little bit. And when our compassion fatigue goes unchecked, it turns into burnout. And burnout is actually a syndrome that's recognized by the World Health Organization. And it's a chronic workplace stressor, that has not been successfully managed. So it's compassion fatigue that hasn't been managed. And then you turn into burnout. And that's when you're just like, I don't like my job. People are, I can't help anybody. You stop being effective at your job. You just start to lose the love for it. And this is specific to occupation. This doesn't apply to raising your children, for example, even though that's a job. Maybe it does. We'd have to ask World Health Organization about that. But still, it's something that really does apply to our job. And it's serious. This can lead to a lot of things that in general we'd like to not deal with, right? So the big thing is we need to learn to set those boundaries. And I would be irresponsible if I didn't mention the reality of therapy. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the movie Garden State. I don't know if any of you saw that. It came out, 13 or 14 years ago, a while ago, maybe 15 or 16. Oh my gosh, a long time ago. And this fellow has gone in to talk to his doctor. And his doctor is basically saying, sooner or later, if you're not in some form of therapy, whatever's going on in your mind will find a way to peek its little head out of the water. And that really resonated with me. Is pharmaceuticals sometimes have their place, there's no doubt, but even with pharmaceuticals, you need to be in some form of therapy Some of us, I personally seek out therapy. It has helped me tremendously. Other folks, maybe that's not their thing to go to a therapist or go to a life coach or whatever. Maybe you need another form of therapy. And there's a lot of forms of therapy out there. It's not just sitting in a circle talking with others, even though that's one form and it works. There's a lot of different forms of therapy. So the key is finding what works for you, right? What is what equals self-care for you? And it's very, very personal. And when we're in these states, if we were to go to a therapist right now and we were suffering from compassion fatigue, they would tell us, here's what you need to do. You need to eat healthier and you need to exercise more and you need to spend more time doing what you want and you need to meditate and you need to increase your sleep and the quality of your sleep. I think all of us have heard this. You can't get on a news website nowadays without hearing about the COVID fatigue and these different things. And these 5 bullet points are almost always what they give to people. Hey, here's what you do to deal with this stressor in your life. But what do those really mean? All right. And who has the time? Right? I can't do all that stuff. I'm trying to deal with my compassion fatigue. Come on. So I'm here to simplify your life. You're welcome. To kind of talk about exercise and movement. And what if by moving our bodies more, we could affect all of those things? So we could affect our sleep and our eating and our emotional state and our stress. We could reduce our stress. We could increase our health. All of these things can be affected by exercise or movement. So instead of having to do all of those things, we just have to exercise. We just have to move our body. And here goes my sales pitch. The exercise effect. And I like to call this the snowball effect, right? Because it's not only cyclical, it also starts to build and it builds its own momentum so that you don't even have to push that ball anymore. It just is downhill and gaining momentum and it's awesome. First of all, exercise. When we exercise, maybe not immediately, but you do feel better. Our bodies want to move. That is the reality of it. We're going to be stiff and sore if we sit all day, and we're going to be stiff and sore if we move all day. Which one do you want, right? Because moving is going to increase our health, and not moving is going to decrease our health. So let's choose that moving. We feel better. And when we feel better, we tend to maybe create a little bit better relationship with our bodies. And we want to eat better. We want to put fuel in our bodies that actually helps our body, makes it healthier. And then, of course, we feel better, right? We exercise, we eat better, we again start to feel better. Usually when those things are starting in that snowball effect, we do start to sleep better. We might not be getting such hormonal increases and decreases. A little bit out of my scope of practice here, but the reality is if you're popping your insulin up and down all day long, even if you don't develop diabetes, your body is still on this hormonal roller coaster, which is very hard to deal with, and it's very hard to get a good sleep, right, when that's happening. You sleep better and you feel better. If anybody who's had trouble sleeping got a good night's sleep, you feel so much better that next day. And then when you feel better, you want to exercise more. When you exercise, you feel good. And when you feel good, you eat better. And when you eat better, you feel better. And then you sleep better. And you see, yeah, it's very simple. And it works. It really does. It's not going to be immediate. But if you just give it a little bit of time, it's effective. So let's talk about how exercise specifically affects all those different areas. First of all, so exercise and sleep. This is a picture of my dog. Some of you have seen him on different Healthy at Homes that I have posted. And I love this picture of him because he just looks like he's sleeping so peacefully, and he might be. But if you really look at the picture, his eyes are open. So it's almost like he's so tired, but he just can't fall asleep. And I know I've been in this state, and I'm sure many of you have been in this state where you just want to sleep, but you either can't turn your brain off or sleep just won't come. The good news is there's a definite link between better sleep and exercise. Absolutely, there's no doubt. The exercise body, the body that moves, usually finds a better quality of sleep. And remember, quantity of sleep doesn't necessarily mean quality sleep. We want good, deep sleep, good REM. And again, outside of my scope, but that's the kind of sleep where we really get to repair our bodies. When we sleep, there's a ton of repair that goes on. Our brain tissue repairs, our muscles repair. I don't know if you've ever gone to bed sore and woken up the next morning and been like, hey, all right, I feel better. It's because overnight our bodies was able to do some of that healing that we need. To get rid of metabolic waste. Oh, it's so good, right? Get all that crap out that we developed during the day. And then by doing all of that, our stress goes down. There's certain homeostasis that happens with our hormones while we sleep, and it's wonderful. One of the articles I was reading talked about an increase in body temperature in the morning and a decrease in body temperature at night. And because of that, there is, and I always hear this excuse. People say, well, only time I can exercise is at night. And I've heard that if you exercise at night, it disrupts your sleep. And it could, absolutely. My thought is, are you already sleeping poorly? Well, then try exercise, right? You're already getting a crappy night's sleep. How about try some exercise so that you can at least see how that affects your sleep. It's really easy to say, I'm not going to do this because I've heard it's negative. Well, why don't you see for yourself? Because you're already experiencing negative with the lack of sleep. Getting outside, getting that sunlight, that's always good for you, right? Tiring out your body, that's always helpful. Maybe because you exercise, you increase your water intake, right? Hydration's so important. So right there, by exercising, we have a really good chance of increasing our sleep quality. Next is our healthy eating, right? Exercise and healthy eating. Now, I know a lot of people feel like, oh, if I exercise, I can eat whatever I want. And hopefully that myth is going by the wayside, because that is absolutely not true. If you exercise in the morning and then you go get that Egg McMuffin, you are in many ways negating that exercise. We want to feed our bodies nutrient-rich foods. If you want your body to be your friend, if you want your body to help you, if you want it to respond to exercise or respond to a stressor during the day, you need to fuel it well. It's like your car. Your brand new car can handle crappy gas, but when that car gets to be 5 or 6 years old, it can't handle that bad gas anymore. You got to get a good quality gas, and really preferably from the very beginning. You are what you eat is so true. You are what you eat. If we're eating foods that are high in sugar, high in simple carbohydrates, high in fats that aren't beneficial to our body, usually we have digestive issues. Anybody ever had digestive issues? You don't feel good during digestive issues. You don't feel like exercising during digestive issues. And a lot of times you can't sleep very well. It's stressful. And a lot of times that can be traced back directly to what you're eating. So we really need to look at nutrient-rich foods, calories that make a difference, right? Not calories for calories' sake, but calories that actually give us macronutrients and micronutrients. Usually when we exercise, we start to value our body and what it does. And if you don't value your body and what it does, if you have that kind of conflicting relationship with your body, let's work on that, because this is it. This is the vehicle, right, for the rest of our lives until they figure out a way to pop into another body, right? Which, who knows? But for right now, this is it. So I want this thing to last, not so I can live longer, but so that I can live better. So I want to value my body. When I value my body, when I think it has some worth, when it's doing me some good, then I want to feed it good food. Food is fuel. Food is fuel. When I'm eating kale, oh, it tastes good. Not because maybe it tastes good, but because I know that I'm putting nutrients into my body. Salads taste good. Sardines taste good because they're so packed with good things for me. So that's another thing right there. You want to eat healthier, you can start to exercise, and a lot of times that will just kind of bleed over into what we eat and how we think about what we're putting into our bodies. Next is exercise and stress reduction. I've learned a lot just through researching for this presentation. Our body is such a big hormone. Our bodies are just hormones, right? One hormone signaling something else. And when we're stressed, we put out a lot of hormones that really over time can be destructive to our bodies. And the good thing is when we exercise, it's not only that when we exercise, we reduce our stress through physical activity, right? They say if you're angry, go and hit something, pound and do a boxing workout or whatever. Yeah, sure. But really what we're doing is getting our body more resilient and able to combat those stress hormones that negatively affect our body. So we're actually getting our body to be more resilient against stress and stress hormones. And this is huge. So it's not just the meditative aspect, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, of exercise that helps us. It actually helps us, again, combat the effects of chronic stress. And we all have stress, right? Some of us have good stress, like getting ready for this conference. It was stressful. It was super exciting. That's okay. And also there was an end to it. But that chronic stress of caregiving, there's always going to be somebody else who's sick. There's always going to be somebody else who needs my help. That is something that we need to get our bodies able to combat. And exercise does that. It's wonderful. Lots of research going on right now in that field. Also, the meditative form of exercise. So when I think of meditation, a lot of times I think sitting on a pillow with my arms on my hands out and oming. That never worked for me. And I have this saying, and you can see, this is actually a picture of this thing that I have in my room here. And you can see it's laminated. And in my old job in Chicago, I had my own laminator in my office, so I used to laminate everything. This thing's really important to me. So this is probably 18 years old. It says, it is when you are really living in the present, working, thinking, lost, absorbed in something you care about very much, that you are living spiritually. And that's always really resonated with me, that meditation doesn't have to be still. Meditation can be moving. My body likes to be in motion, and it's okay for me to meditate in motion. And exercise can absolutely do that. So when I exercise, I am very focused on what my body is doing, my form, the exercises that have been laid out in front of me. I'm not thinking about what I need to do today or the Elder Justice Conference that I'm going to be presenting at. I'm focused on getting through that workout. That's a form of meditation. When you really start to appreciate the exercise that you're in, it can be meditative. Now, for those of you who like to sit and meditate, great, more power to you. But really, the idea of meditation is to keep those random thoughts from coming into our brains. And you can do that by being completely focused on what you're doing. So there you go. Another reason, another way that just by exercising, you can knock out some of these things that help with self-care. And lastly here, exercise is just good for you. It just is. It's good for your body. That means everything in your body is positively affected by exercise. Yeah, I know sometimes tendons and muscles get sore and maybe we get injured. That's probably from something different, maybe not doing form well or actual injury from playing a sport. But as far as brain health, exercise helps, mainly because we get oxygen to our brain when we get that blood pumping. Our brains love oxygen. Give it oxygen. So important. It's great for our heart, for our skeleton. You want to keep osteoporosis away? Exercise. Super, super important and effective. Muscular health, right? Our muscles, whether it's strength or endurance, muscular strength or endurance, both. Exercise do both. And our hormonal health, which is a huge deal. If you don't know about hormones, investigate it. Super important. And exercise absolutely has an effect on it. So exercise is just good for you. You don't have to like that, you know. It might make you mad, but the reality is it is one-stop shopping. So now let's talk about how do we add exercise into our lives? Because who has the time, right? Where's the motivation, right, to add exercise into our lives? And the first thing that I always tell people is find why you value exercise. What is exercise going to do for you specifically, right? Are you looking for stress relief? Great. Maybe you just want to be able to participate in events with your friends. When they call up and say, hey, we're doing a fun run. And you can say, yeah, I can walk 3 miles, no problem. Maybe you do want better health. For me, it was always emotional health. That was why I got into exercise. I've always been active. My dad was the type who watched a lot of football, but during breaks, we went out and threw the football. You didn't sit during commercials, you moved during commercials. But it wasn't until college, when I was going through my first heartbreak, that I found that the only time I really felt good was when I was riding my bike. So I rode my bike a ton, and it helped, right? Now, as I get older, it's independence. I want to be able to stand up and sit down off of that toilet. I want to be able to continue to grocery shop. I want to be able to get in and out of my car. People will say, yeah, you're young. Not, you know what? 20 years from now, I'm not going to be. So why not start now? Maybe you want to be able to play with your kids or your grandkids. You fill in the blank. Don't do it because your spouse told you to, or your doctor told you to, or because society tells you. Figure out how it's going to help you. Secondly, the time use diary. Sorry, I keep looking at my watch, but time. Time use diary. This is something that I borrowed from another evidence-based class that we present from the health promotion team called Aging Mastery Program. And what we do is when we take older adults, many of them who are newly retired, and are kind of lost, we have them do a time use diary to really look at how you're spending your time. Some of you truly don't have time. What you're going to have to do is look at how you're spending your time and replace this with exercise, because exercise is going to benefit you more than this. And the this that I'm talking about is what we call downtime, staring at a TV, staring at our computer, staring at our phones. Those times in our day could be replaced with movement, with exercise. But you're not going to really know that until you really look at how are you spending your time. I remember when I started at Southern Utah Veterans Home, and I'd come around, hey, you guys, you want to come exercise? I'd have people tell me, oh, I don't have the time. I'm like, you don't have the time? You live here. What are you doing? It was a big thing that they would tell me. And I'm sure they didn't think they had the time. And maybe they really didn't have the time. But this is going to benefit you. This is going to help you. So let's see if there's something we can replace during your day with exercise, because it's so beneficial. And then you got to think about how you're going to start, right? It doesn't matter. We don't need to bite off more than we can chew. Hopefully, we're all going to be alive in a year from now. So let's say you change your exercise routine the smallest amount every month. Just 1 minute a month of a week, and I'll get into that in just a second. It doesn't have to be great strides. Movement is movement, even if it's a small amount. So don't minimalize. Oh, I don't do enough, so it doesn't matter. Well, it's going to matter in a year from now when you're a year older and you still haven't done anything. So we really want to remember that forward motion is forward motion. Doesn't matter how fast, and really better, let's do it at a good controlled pace. We've all heard about SMART goals. Sustainable, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-based. Oh my gosh, I've heard about SMART goals for 20 years, 25 years. They never made sense to me. It's like, well, I mean, they do on paper, but how do you really apply them? There was one recently in the healthy lifestyles based on money that I actually did do, and it did help me. But how are those related to exercise? Let's look at them real quick. Sustainable. What can you do over time? So if you're not doing any exercise, don't tell me that next week you're going to do 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day. That's silly. If you haven't done it up to this point, what makes you think that you're just going to be able to go from 0 to 100 and you're going to be able to keep it? And this is one of those things like with eating. People are like, oh, I'm just going to change my eating. And some people can do it, but most people can't. You need to slowly turn that ship. It needs to be a slow turn. So really think about, what can I do over time? And usually if you start small, you can find yourself successful. Measurable. It needs to be something that you can actually measure. So, for example, I want to add 5 minutes of exercise to my day during the week. That means Monday through Friday, I want to do 5 minutes each day. That's 25 minutes I'm adding of exercise per week. Can I do that? I think so. Can I measure it? Yeah, I can. I can put it on my stopwatch and make a note of it and see that I did it. Attainable. Is it realistic? Do you really have those 5 extra minutes? Probably, right? If anybody snoozes, you got the minutes, right? Stop snoozing, get out of bed. So there is it really something? If you don't have 5 minutes, take it down to 1 minute. All right. So realistic. I want to add 1 minute of exercise to my day every day. So that's 7 minutes I'm adding a week. That's okay. As long as it's attainable, as long as it's realistic to you, it's a step forward. Time-based, right? Put an end date on it. Not a forever end date, but if you want to add 5 minutes of exercise to your day during the week, give yourself some time to work up to that. So by the end of July of this year, I want to be adding 5 minutes of exercise to my work week. So that's the end of July is what, probably 8 weeks away, something like that, maybe 10. That means every 2 weeks, I need to add another 5 minutes of exercise. The first 2 weeks, I can add it on Monday. The second 2 weeks, I can add it Monday and Tuesday. Third 2 weeks, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Do you see how slow and deliberate? But by the end of July, those 5 minutes are going to be part of what I'm doing. So start small. I know the CDC tells us 150 minutes per week, and that is what we're looking to do. Yes, we're looking to do strength exercises. There's no doubt about that. But guess what? If that's not something you can do now, figure out what you can do. That's the most important thing. Here's another thing. Snack on exercise. Don't eat a whole meal of exercise if you can't, right? If an hour of exercise makes you just sick to your stomach, well, then what about 5 minutes of exercise? What about 1 minute of exercise? So balance breaks, standing up at your desk, standing on one knee, on one leg, sit to stands at your desk. Maybe it's at home while you're watching TV. Maybe you're like, look, crazy lady, I'm not giving up my TV time. Okay, great. During the commercials, I want you to sit to stand the whole time. Every commercial, sit and stand, right? Maybe you just simply stand more during your day. I went out and bought a standing desk for my home because that money pales in comparison for what being able to stand during my workday does for me mentally and physically. There's just no comparison between the two. I know at Salt Lake County, we have those standing desks. They're wonderful. If you don't have one of those, that's okay. Maybe you take a lap in your little office there. And one of the ways that I think is really effective, and I tell the older adults all the time, is add 1 minute of movement to every hour you're awake. So this is to people who don't do a lot of movement, don't do a lot of focused movement. Most of us are awake, 16, 17, maybe 18 hours a day. So I'm saying is for 1 minute to march in place, for 1 minute to do jumping jacks, or for 1 minute to do sit to stands. Every hour you're awake. All of a sudden you've added 18 minutes to your day. Just like that, without even thinking about it. That counts. It's brilliant. It works. All right. It doesn't have to be crazy. But for those of you who are looking for a workout, right? I wanted to introduce, and for many of you, you probably know about this, the every minute on the minute workout. It's called an EMOM. Totally stole this from CrossFit. but it's awesome, and it's being used more and more even with the older adult population. Basically, what you do is you choose, let's say you're going to do a 10-minute workout, right? 10 minutes of working out. You think of 1, 2, 5, or 10 different exercises. And I'm going to give you an example in just a second. They can be cardiovascular or strength, or they can be a combination of both, which is ideal, right? You want to get them all in. And then set a number of each exercise that you know you can do in less than 45 seconds. Maybe it only takes you 15 seconds to do it. That's okay. But we always want at least a 15-second break. So don't be unrealistic and say, I'm going to do 50 push-ups in minute 1. Well, you probably, if you do that, you're not going to be able to move your arms the next day. So that's, you're right. With this, effective and simple. It really isn't complex. So for example, minute 1, I'm going to do 5 push-ups. They can be on my knees. I don't care. Minute 2, I'm going to do 30 seconds of jumping jacks. They don't have to be both legs. It could just be one leg. Minute 3, I'm going to do 10 air squats. It can be sit stands if that makes you feel more comfortable.
Paige,
And minute 4, yeah.
Paige.
Yeah.
Hi, a little bit of sound going out a little bit. It might just because you're moving around.
It'll come back.
It'll come back. You're good. Sorry.
Okay.
Just one.
There we
Thanks.
go. Minute 4, we could do, thank you, Laura, I appreciate it. Minute 4, we could do 8 overhead presses. And minute 5, we could do 10 rows. All of those you should be able to get done in really less than about 30 seconds. And then you get to rest. The rest of the time you get to rest. So I'm going to do my 5 push-ups. I'm going to rest for the rest of that minute. And I'm going to do my 30 jumping jacks, and then for 30 seconds, I'm going to rest for 30 seconds. 10 air squats, and then I'm going to rest for 30 seconds, or however long I have. So the idea is get these out of the way and then rest. And then my minute 6 through 10, I'm going to repeat minutes 1 through 5, and then I'm done. My workout is done. And then the idea is maybe the next time you do this, or the next month when you're doing this, you do 6 push-ups. See if you can get 6 in the same amount of time. Maybe you do 12 air squats, right? So you slowly, incrementally increase what you're doing in that time. But you don't have to necessarily increase how long you're working out. And this right here will make a difference. It doesn't need to be crazy. Again, you do 2-minute warm-up, 2-minute cool down. We're talking about 15 minutes total. And it's not complicated. And I think a lot of times that's part of why people get discouraged from doing exercises. It just gets so complicated. And ultimately, the good news is any form of exercise can relieve stress and improve our health and improve our sleep. Yoga, meditation, any type of movement. It doesn't have to be strength training. It doesn't have to be cardiovascular training. It can be mobility training. Any sort of movement helps. So hopefully I've kind of shown you how exercise is that one-stop shopping. Let's make sure that we're aware of when we're experiencing compassion fatigue, set those boundaries that we need to keep ourselves in check, and use a form of therapy to reinforce those boundaries. And one possible form of therapy is exercise. Again, one-stop shopping. Thank you for being here today. And now we're going to open it up to questions and answers, if we have any questions and answers. And Laura is going to let me know of any questions or comments that might be out there. I've also put my email on this in case anybody would like to get in touch with me.
Excellent. There's no questions at this time.
Okay. That's great. I know it's been a long day for everybody. If there are questions, you can ask them. Otherwise, thank you for.
We have one that came in, but it's more of a comment. It says, very powerful. Thank you. And I agree. Great job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for being part of the Elder Justice Conference.
Yeah, so if there aren't any more questions, maybe we'll wait just a second. Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, okay, we're ready. Here's a question. How do we find motivation to do this?
find value. Figure out how reducing your stress, increasing your health is going to benefit you. And again, it can be very personal to you. You want to be able to walk your dog. You want to be able to get on the ground with your kids or grandkids. You want to be able to garden. It doesn't matter as long as it has worth for you. So you got to find that value. What is it going to do for you that is going to be that carrot? And so, for example, with the older adults that I work with, a lot of time their value is independence. I want to remain independent for as long as I can. So that means I need to do squats, because if I want to keep going to the toilet on my own, I need to be able to do a squat. So all of a sudden they're willing to do a squat, whereas before it held no value.
I love that. And we're just receiving a lot of thank yous. Thank you for the positive attitude. Thank you for the motivation. Great.
Thanks to everybody. Appreciate you being here.
All right, we want to thank Paige for her presentation today and thank all of you for being part of the Utah Elder Justice Conference this year. Just a reminder, all of the sessions have been recorded and they'll be on the Utah Elder Justice Conference website, I'm assuming by next week. So if you missed something or want to review something, you can go ahead and find all the recordings on the Utah Elder Justice website. But if there aren't any more questions, then we just wish you all a good day. Thank you again, Paige.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.